I've never been excited about Disney's live-action remakes of my beloved childhood movies, but Lilo and Stitch is definitely not one I'm interested in seeing. I'll definitely wait till I see any reviews. However, regardless of the quality of the live action, I will always have the amazing original. And speaking of the original, if you're familiar with my content, let's talk about how you can create Stitch in Warhammer 40k. Hello, and welcome to Homebrew Heresy, where we bring your heretical ideas to life, taking all your favorite characters and factions and translating them into 40k. So, during my weekly nostalgia bins, and in preparation for the upcoming live-action remake, I decided to rewatch Lilo and Stitch, including the two unnecessarily sad sequels. Unfortunately, within 3 minutes of the first movie starting, I was already asking myself, I wonder how you can make Stitch in 40k. As always, let's begin with the origins and history of Experiment 626, and the other 625. Created by the idiot scientist,
I prefer to be called Evil Genius!
Jumbo Jukiba, and his associate Dr. Hamsterville, these experiments were meant to cause mass mayhem and planet-wide panic. So, for any of you power scalers out there, canonically Stitch is a planet-level threat, and there are over 600 of these guys running around on Earth. Regardless, while Hamsterville would assist in the creation, he would eventually be cast out, and Jumbo alone would finish what they started. Creating 625 prototypes and variants, Jumbo would combine the greatest features and traits all together to create the ultimate tool of destruction. Luckily, the Galactic Alliance, a collection of planetary and stellar governments, had managed to capture both 626 and Jumba. While Jumba did create 626 from malicious intent and was sentenced to life in prison as a result, 626, who was driven by instinct to destroy, was sentenced to the way more forgiving and merciful life in exile. However, 626, being the ultimate living weapon, was able to quickly escape and find himself stranded on the planet of Earth. From there, the little blue ball of destruction would learn the value of family, what it means to be good, and even become a captain of his own spaceship, all while facing off against his cousins before finding every single one of them the place where they belong. That's pretty much the history and lore of Stitch, and the anime reboot doesn't exist. Now then, let's cover the blue guy's weapons, armor, and abilities. With razor-sharp claws able to cut through mostly any material to acidic spit and a jaw able to deliver a bite so strong it can tear apart metal, Stitch is a devastating living weapon. Alongside that, his forearms and astronomical strength allow him to lift and swing a car with ease. Add on top of that, Stitch is also ridiculously durable, being able to withstand incredible force and even a volcanic eruption at point-blank range. Jumbo even questions if anything in the galaxy could stop 626, guessing a direct hit from a plasma cannon might be able to stun him long enough to catch him. Considering the amount of damage a plasma cannon deals in these movies, that's pretty crazy. Especially when you remember Stitch strip catches a blast and holds it for a few seconds, tossing it back and forth. And if that wasn't insane enough already, Stitch even canonically resurrects himself with the power of friendship. I know this shouldn't technically be an ability Stitch has, but if it's good enough for the movie, that's good enough for me. Now, well, that's pretty wild, but let's see if Stitch's methods of war are just as insane. While it's unclear how Jumbo wanted 626 to be deployed, his statement about being drawn to large cities alongside his feats of both agility and intelligence, we can kind of assume he was meant to infiltrate and terrorize worlds into ruin. It's a good thing he found Lilo, Nani, and learned about Ohana. But as for us, we still gotta find out which major faction we'll be using for this homebrew. But before that, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Make sure YouTube's Machine Spirit sees my efforts and our growing community. I am also starting a Patreon soon as a result of quitting my job after nearly dying on site, so if you guys want to support me, keep a lookout for that as well. Alright, back to the content at hand. Covering some honorable homebrews first. Blue skin, infiltrative nature, and polymorphic bodies all lead me to suggest the Gene Stealer cult as a possible build for this homebrew, especially with the hack-shackle design of some of Stitch's creations and the fact that Jumbo kinda looks like a patriarch. And honestly, I was a bit on the fence about not using the GSC for this build, but I'd say you're just as valid if you do. But I think the faction I chose just fits a little bit better. The Tyranids, the Great Devourer. The hive-minded exogalactic terror that is the Tyranids are the perfect fit for this homebrew. Let's cover how and why I think so. First off, Stitch's super intelligence can easily be reflected by the Tyranid's hive mind and its ability to control all bioforms simultaneously across the galaxy. Next up, Stitch's strength and agility, both of which serve to make Stitch a potent force of nature. And just like Stitch, many Tyranid bioforms are also notably strong, like the Hive Guard. Others, however, are said to move so fluidly that their movements are blindingly fast. And then you have the ones that are both, like the deadly Tyranid warriors or even a Hive Tyrant. The best part, both of these bioforms also have forearms, just like Stitch. And then if you choose to include a little bit about Stitch coming back to life, then you've also got the Swarm Lord, who literally has the ability to come back to life. Plus, if you guys wanted to try and expand this homebrew to include all of Stitch's cousins, the massive diversity of bioforms available to the Tyranids is perfect for reflecting that. Now, I'm not going to cover all of Stitch's cousins, but here is one that literally just has a straight Tyranid ability. Richter, or Experiment 513, is able to cause massive tectonic disturbances, a pretty powerful and devastating ability, but I bet you'd be surprised to know that Tyranids not only have something similar, but overall better. The Tyranid bioform called a Narval, not Narwhal, is a spaceborne biotitan and is responsible for the Tyranid's ability to travel faster than light. These bioforms create a wormhole or a gravity tunnel between themselves and a nearby solar system. From there, the tunnel or whatever it is collapses and basically creates a flood of gravity that pulls the Narval and all nearby ships towards the system. Now, as interesting as that is, what's pretty fun is the fact that when this happens, the gravitational shockwave causes all the planets in the system to basically go through the worst series of earthquakes imaginable. So not only are those planets getting slammed with back-to-back marine ford levels of destruction on a regular basis, but then those worlds have to survive an eventual Tyranid invasion. Hopefully, that alone was not only justification enough for picking the Tyranids of the GSC, but helped you guys learn a little bit more about Tyranid lore. And so, with all the preamble out of the way, let's get to covering what you need to buy to get this homebrew underway. Looking first at some potential proxies, I can see the Swarmlord or Hive Tyrant being fantastic models to use for Experiment 626. All it needs is some blue paint and some wads of green stuff to make fur, and you've got the perfect Stitch kit bash. And if you're making a Stitch proxy, then you gotta have Angel too. This unique little experiment has the insane ability to mentally and morally manipulate other living creatures. She can literally turn good experiments into evil variants themselves, and while not the most friendly to Rule 34 searches, the Nerd Tyrant has an unchallenged psychic ability that, when combined with the Shadow of the Warp, can drive most creatures to mentally collapse. And if the 10th edition trailer is anything to go by, it can literally cause Space Marines to go comatose. There are so many possibilities for potential proxies and fun color schemes that I think this will definitely be one of the most fun homebrews to get invested in. Now, how do we do that? Of course, we gotta go through a buying list to help you guys create the perfect homebrew army. As always, we'll be looking at the 500-point mark to keep things fast, easy, and affordable. I like to look at the combat patrol of the armies I'm homebrewing, so let's take a look at the box in question. While I do enjoy this box for what it offers, mostly being a decent start to a Tyranid army, this box does lack a proper proxy for our little blue ball of fur. Now, just because it doesn't have a decent Stitch proxy doesn't mean this box isn't totally irredeemable. The Psychophage can serve as a fun, if twisted, proxy for our sandwich-loving experiment 625, later known as Reuben. His seemingly insatiable hunger for one particular type of food makes him very single-minded and also incredibly driven, both traits this psyker-hunting bioform has in excess. The Von Ryan's Leapers could work as proxies for all the experiments known for possessing razor-sharp talons or claws, or even Stitch himself. The Termagants are one of the only units I'm kind of confused on how to use them. They don't really fit with any one experiment, but they could kind of function as a stand-in for Stitch while he's armed with those plasma cannons. But even I gotta say it's a stretch. Regardless, you're going to need some battle line units, so unfortunately I kind of have to say this is one of those times you gotta accept it and just deal with the fact that it might not be a perfect one for one. But when the Termagants get a passing inclusion in this homebrew, the Barbgaunts are welcomed in. These long-range bioforms fire organic artillery shells that, when hit, disrupt enemy units. Now, funnily enough, there is one experiment that has a not too dissimilar ability. Spike, or Experiment 319, is an experiment designed with the ability to fire projectile spikes from their tail, and when hit, causes them to become intoxicated. I know it kind of just reduces their cleverness, but I mean, come on. Regardless, that's definitely something I count as disrupted, so the 5 Barbgaunts are staying in this homebrew. Now, that leaves us with the HQ in the room. The Winged Tyranid Prime does have enough limbs to pass for Stitch. 626 is missing wings, however. Luckily, there are more than a few experiments with the ability to fly, so we could easily proxy the Prime as any one of them, especially if we choose Sparky, because he's honestly my favorite. The Ripper Swarms could pass for any small digging experiments, because I know there's a few of those as well, so they're easy to deal with. And while all this is great, it does leave us with one big issue, at least I find it personally, and that is, we're missing Stitch. So that's why for this homebrew, while I'm suggesting this box is great for our Stitch homebrew, we will eventually need to ditch the Tyranid Prime for a Swarmlord or Hive Tyrant. Either one could work for Stitch, like I mentioned before, but the Tyrant, while strong, does not have a psychic ability like the Swarmlord, which I think makes it more accurate and fitting to Stitch. Altogether, though, this does push you over the 500-point limit we set earlier, so just make sure to clear that up with your opponent beforehand. And with all that out of the way, let's get to covering the story time on our very own custom Hive Fleet. Hive Fleet Medusa is a strange and utterly irregular hive fleet among the many to enter our galaxy. While all hive fleets are predetermined to modify and experiment on themselves to best deal with their enemies, the bioforms of Medusa are particularly proficient, with many bioforms possessing a higher standard of augmentation and adaptation, many of which seem to be totally unnecessary to assist in the challenge at hand. Moreover, this fleet is strangely small despite its rapid rate of consumption, though it is likely that both these features play a part in explaining one another. What's more, the bioforms of Medusa seem to all be significantly more deadly and potentially more independent, with sometimes only single bioforms being needed to set foot on a planet to ensure its total collapse and eventual consumption. To this end, it seems Hyphae Medusa makes far less and infrequent use of Genestealer cults, though that knowledge does rarely bring any planetary governor peace when they know a hive fleet is on its way, especially when those same reports claim that Hyphae Medusa makes repeated use of the Swarmlord bioform, or at least a highly modified and evolved variant of the Hive Tyrant. Regardless of the truth, countless worlds have already fallen before this hive fleet's advance, and there is no telling where its instinctual purpose will lead them. Where will Hive Fleet Medusa go now? Why not tell me how you'd continue their story in the comment section below? And while you're down there, why not leave a like? I have given you everything you need to create your own homebrew hive fleet based on experiment 626. Finally, to close out this video, I just want to say thank you for watching to the end and thank you for your time and your support. You guys are amazing and I am very happy seeing this community grow once again. Hopefully I can do an update video at some point saying why I quit my job and what all happened. At the end of the day, though, I'm just happy to try and make this YouTube thing go full time. And I'd be happy if you guys could join me on this journey. But with all that out of the way, I've got nothing else to say, and I hope you guys all have a great rest of your day. Bye.